Good morning, everyone. Hello, and welcome to our session this morning, Meet the Funders with Grainne Australia. My name is Amy Parry. I'm a writer and producer from Queensland. I'm also one of the ones to watch this year with SPA. I'd like to begin today's session by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands and waters of the Gold Coast, the Yugambeh language people, and pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and extend my respects and welcomes to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people with us in the room today. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce this session this morning, the Meet the Funders session with Grainne Australia, where you'll get to hear directly from our federal funding body, which is very exciting. And it is my pleasure and privilege to introduce you to our session moderator, Queensland producer and director Dena Curtis. Some of Dena's directing credits include comedy series 8MMM Aboriginal radio documentary series Shadow Trackers and 2 episodes of ABC's factual series Back to Nature. Dena also directed a chapter of the anthology feature We Are Still Here. And some of her producing credits include Logie-nominated children's television series Grace Beside Me. Dena co-produced Firebite for Seesaw Films, AMC Network, and is producer of Blackfella Films, ABC's First Weapons, and most recently, executive producer of award-winning 4x1 hour documentary series for NITV, Rebel with a Cause. How fabulous. Handing over to Dena.
I think I turned that microphone off. Okay. Morning, everybody. I would like to just start with also an acknowledgement to the Kumbamerri families of the Yugambeh language region, whose country we meet on today, and welcome you to the last day of Screen Forever. Hope you've got enough energy to get through to the party tonight. As mentioned, I'm the moderator today, and to quote Deirdre from her chat on Tuesday, having robust conversations makes us who we are, so let's make this session as conversational as possible. And please submit your questions through the audience Q&A section in your app, and I think there's also a QR code somewhere that you can snap up, and I'll try and incorporate your questions into the conversation as much as possible. But before we start our conversation, let's set the tone with a couple of clips. And can we play both of those clips now?
Welcome to Australia.
The show is about to begin.
The notion of what is an Australian story, I think, is becoming increasingly sophisticated and diverse.
Talk to me.
Who and how this country is made up is constantly evolving.
What does the photo say about me?
I think times have changed. I think Australian films have changed. Now Australian films are seen as a really interesting, important voice.
Be honest with me.
What characterises Australia is our outsider perspective.
Dickheads.
We're such a bastard culture in a way.
Hey, mate.
Throw all of that into the melting pot and it comes out with an Australian voice.
Keep talking, brother. I swear you won't have to leave the hospital.
To have windows into these different worlds that bring us together as a very powerful medium.
I'll shoot you where you stand and I'll bury you where you fall.
We're winning Academy Awards, right across the board.
Whenever you go to America, they say, what is it in the water that produces so many Australian actors who are working internationally?
I'll do it.
There is a great wealth of talent, and it's not just the actors, it's the people behind the camera.
And the stories they're telling really connect, and that's what people want. And not just Australian audiences.
The Australian voice, I think, is a unique voice and such a huge variety of stories we can tell in this country.
Because we're pushing and we're trying, we have a better chance of being able to connect with an audience.
And that's what they're drawn to now, the stories, not just the Australianness. I mean, cinema reflects back to a society what it means to be alive, what it means to be human.
I feel like you can sense the country expanding with its level of understanding.
There is something unique about the Australian spirit that I think shines on screen.
It is the lucky country into which everyone's invited.
Oh, nice. All right, so I'm just waiting on my Q&A iPad, so don't stress if I don't start asking your questions. I'll do that as soon as I get them. Cool. So I'd like to start the session off with asking each of our speakers here today, and thank you for your time and for joining us. I would like to ask you to please introduce yourself and the department that you work in. Just a couple of minutes.
Wallawani, I'm Jorjia Gillis. I'm from the First Nations Department. I'm a development and investment manager. It's flipped. And I'm a proud saltwater Yuin Budawang woman. My family comes from the south coast of New South Wales, and I'm very happy to be here on this country today.
Kia ora. My name is Bobby Romia. I'm the head of development, prioritising more story development for scripted feature films and scripted TV, and I'm a Polynesian Australian.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm Richard Huddleston. I'm the it's my honour to be the head of documentary at Grainne Australia.
Morning, Grainne Brunsdon. I'm Director of Content currently, but becoming, Chief Operating Officer as of the 1st of April. So it's all quite new for me too. So the areas of content that are within my team are documentary, story development, scripted production investment, which includes children's and TV drama as well as feature film, marketplace, online games, and P&A marketing as well, and industry development. Thank you, Amelia.
Hi everyone, I'm Rakel Tansley. I'm the marketplace manager, and my team work across all of the content areas, working with producers from sales, deal terms, and when you're coming in early with your late development.
Hi, my name's Louise Cox, and I'm an investment and development manager in the online department.
Thank you. So carrying on from Deirdre's session on Tuesday, Grainne, I was wanting to ask you, get your thoughts in your new role, which you're about to step into in April. What do you hope to achieve in this role, and how do you, what are your hopes for Screen Australia in the next 12 months? Because it seems to be a lot of change coming.
Well, there is a lot of change, I guess, because, Graham was CEO for 10 years, so having a new CEO come in after that time initiates a series of, I guess, a period of reflection and reset. There's an opportunity to reset and look at what we're doing. Is it fit for purpose? looking into the future. And obviously there's been a lot of disruption in the sector, and I don't think that's going to change. That's going to continue in terms of where audiences are looking for their content, the types of content they're looking for, how it's delivered to them, and how content makers and filmmakers can reach those audiences is changing all the time. So I think one of the things that I'm interested in is looking for us to have more knowledge about where audiences are looking for their content, what kind of content they're looking for, and how we can work with the sector to help them reach those audiences at the same time as building a sustainable business. Because obviously there's lots of people looking at YouTube. It's not necessarily the best for monetizing, a film or a TV series, but there are lots of other ways that we kind of want to work with people. So I think the genres that we're in, Deirdre talked about trying to find another word for online because it feels a bit, I don't know, last century maybe. But there's some of the content that's coming through the area that Louise and her team work in is really exciting, and we've got some really amazing content creators who are making work in that space. Given that it's the #1 space for kids to look at content, we don't have a lot of Australian kids producers working in that space yet, but that will happen because that's where the eyeballs are. And any of the broadcasters will kind of tell you that it's kind of viewing figures on free-to-air are falling off a cliff, as we know, and moving to other places. So what we're trying to do is create Australian content for Australian audiences. We have to work out where those audiences are so we can get that content in front of them. So I guess the things for me for the next year is, and I'll still be looking after content in this new role as well. That will be part of my role, is working with the team, but also working with the sector to see how we can kind of best support them through the work that we're doing.
Great. I guess, you've touched on some of the things, about the challenges that we're faced with. I mean, I guess I was in Content London at the end of last year, not to brag, but, I was there. And there was a lot of conversation about there's challenges coming with the sector. There's it's going to get harder. There's a crunch coming. I mean, what exactly does that mean, for us Australian creatives? And, how is Screen Australia looking to, get in front of that and help us, support, navigate those challenges coming?
I was at Content London too. I think one of the interesting things was that there was a lot of doom and gloom in the sessions, and certainly from the UK part of the sector, who were saying, production companies are going to be going to the wall, it's just terrible, because nobody was commissioning, nobody's buying. And the US was the same, obviously, coming off the back of the strikes. There was a lot of contraction, a lot of layoffs, so kind of there's systemic kind of issues that are being dealt with, certainly in those territories. And it seemed to me that a lot of the Australian producers, because there would have been 100 Australian producers at Content London, were kind of coming out of the rooms going, not really feeling that. It doesn't feel like that's the kind of, we're having to deal with that yet. But I think it's a yet. I think it will kind of come. I think one of the issues for us is that to if you're in TV and trying to kind of get something of a certain scale, we need international finance, whether that's a co-commission, whether it's pre-sales, whether it's just somebody backing it in with as a sales agent or a distribution company. And if they can't see a future where there's going to be lots of sales and they're going to make their money back, that money is going to be harder to access. But that money is a vital piece of most people's finance plans here. So I think it will affect us in a slightly different way. I think what's happening with the big US media companies, Paramount's had their layoffs, Disney's had, written down $3 billion worth of content. All of those kinds of things will impact on Australia. However, there are still massive opportunities, I think. Off the back of the strikes, the impact of the strikes from last year will only really start to hit from mid-year, because that's kind of the lag time between something that would have been written and then going into production. So I think there's an opportunity for English language content, because people are still going to need content. So there are kind of opportunities there. I think the kind of distinctive storytelling that we have, and there was a session yesterday that was talking about, do we need a brand Australia in the way that we've got kind of Scandi Noir or K-dramas and that kind of thing? Is there value in building what could be a brand for Australian content? What would that look like? and kind of it seemed to be that the consensus was it needed to be something about quality, that we've got, this outsider view, it's different, it's not like UK drama, it's not the same kind of perspective. There's a different way of looking at the world from Australia, and obviously our First Nations storytelling is absolutely unique in the world. And when we look at things like Mystery Road and how well that's done, and we look at Warwick's work and how well kind of that works in international markets, we do have some really unique content that we can really kind of stand behind and put it out into the world.
Thank you. So I guess, Bobby, just going on that, what is an Australian brand? How would you sum it up? And how important is... So I put you in the hot seat now. And how important is pathway to audience and understanding that in order to, get our Australian brand out there?
Australian brand, historically, was very identifiable. Like a couple of decades ago, recognition of the kind of comedy and humour that used to permeate through feature films and TV was very resonant, particularly internationally as well as domestically. Touching on Grainne's point about First Nations, that is the clear identifier in terms of the brand naturally that comes out, but there's opportunities to expand on that. So looking at storytelling from diverse voices and looking at diverse storytelling techniques. When I think about the kind of shows that are being produced that is quite unique in storytelling, both in concept and execution, is shows like Deadlock. And the fact that they can still be able to touch on a very familiar procedural or familiar crime narrative, but also permeate humour into that as well. So there's a freshness to that. Because I'm excited by the fact that there's lots of different voices coming through, and that all collectively will be part of the branding of Australia. But I'm of the opinion that First Nations storytelling, because it's so distinctive and so strong, that's the identifier there, and there's opportunities for more. With pathway to audience, from a story development perspective, it is quite tricky because for scripted feature films, we have to have confidence that the practitioners know their audience and know how to get there, particularly at early stage development. So we're asking the questions, who is the audience for this film? Who do you think would be the local distributor for this film, or the sales agent? There's lots of conversations about specific target demographics, whether this film for, say, like Talk to Me, specifically was, focusing on a very Gen Z audience. But that's because, the filmmakers, the Raka Boys, had already established who the audience is from the YouTube days. So they knew how to serve that particular audience, and therefore it felt like an organic process to be able to translate the story to that particular audience. So pathway to audience is depending on the platform and story, but from a development perspective, it's the thing of understanding what audience is right now as you go into this development of their story.
And Richard, do you share the same sentiments in terms of documentary perspective?
I think if we're talking kind of retrospectively, I think what has really resonated on a global level in the past kind of 10, 15, 20 years from an Australian point of view is natural history. I think that's been a really good exporter in the documentary sector and continues to do so well. We've Wild Pacific Media recently won an Emmy for Puff. Ningaloo has been a huge international success by Artemis Media. But I think what's happened kind of more recently is that we're starting to see more successes on the international scale, where we're seeing more a shift away from our flora and fauna and looking at our diverse population. So, you look at like Love on the Spectrum. Great success story at home, US version for Netflix, that's done incredibly well. We've got shows like Stuff the British Stole, big international co-pro with CBC. That is global in ambition. So you've got an Australian host, but he's traveling, literally, Mark Fennell, traveling the four corners of the globe, Africa, South America, Asia, North America, to tell stories that really are not just relevant to Australian audiences, but are globally significant, i.e., and very timely, looking at the impact of colonialism on the empire. So I think there's a broader palette of documentary subject matter and genres that are resonating. You just another one, looking at the Wiggles documentary. I think that's in 240 territories. So yeah, it's broadening out and it's really, really exciting. And I think I'm really energized by that. And I think it's only just beginning that boom, hopefully, for documentaries, Australian documentaries on the global level.
Jorjia, so you're in the First Nations department. What's your perspective on the Australian brand? And I guess for me, one of the sticking points, Bobby mentioned that he feels First Nations is a big part of the what he considers an Australian brand. And I guess I find in the marketplace a sticking point is they want the big stars. They want the big names in the drama series. How do we navigate that, or how do we grow that when there's just, there's maybe a handful of people like Deb Melman, Leah Purcell, Rob Collins, Aaron Pedersen. How do we grow those on-screen talents as well as behind the screen so we're able to, be competitive in that global market?
Yeah, big question, and I think, like Bobby said and everyone said, First Nations makes us distinctive. We're the First Peoples, and travelling around the world, people connect with our stories. We are diverse, we are big, we are bold, and we will be telling stories forever. That is what we do. So that's just the start. And I hear what you're saying about building and seeing familiar, important faces on screen, because we want them to stay on screen because they have worked hard to get there and they are bloody talented. Sorry for swearing. But it's important to grow the next generation and bring them through both below the line, above the line, on screen. And that is a massive part of what our department is doing. For us, we are listening and we are constantly talking to the sector, the First Nations sector, about what it's like out there for them. What are the challenges? What are they needing to do to get to that next level? And I think it's really crucial that we bring up the next gen, but that we are also servicing the mid-career and the established. Because just because you get to that level, like Deb or Leah, doesn't mean that you don't need support. So that is always at the front of our mind. And to be as diverse as possible, from the Torres Strait down to Palawa, all the way across. I think, there's so many different First Nation stories. So I think that is a real challenge for us. And the way that we do that is making sure that we are listening, we are bringing in new development. We've got so many exciting stories coming through that I cannot wait till they get on screen. And so we are building up the next generation and making sure that when they come out, that they hit hard, because it's going to be big. And also, we want to get our mob over into international markets. We're one of the only departments that has First Nation travel grants, because we see it as incredibly crucial that they're going over, making relationships, like Deidre said, making connections, because that's going to reach, that face-to-face, and the initial start now will have that sustainability for their career. Because we know we're talented, we know our stories can travel, we know that, and it's just about providing support sideways, up and down. And I think for us, we're very lucky. We're like a little microcosm within Screen Australia. We don't just touch on feature or series. We do docos. We connect with the online team. And even if we aren't working on a specific project, we're across everything. We're making sure ICIP is being protected. We're making sure that First Nations people above the line are getting opportunities, and we know that there is more white producers than First Nations. We know that, so we are advocating day in and day out. I think that's important, and we need to keep listening and challenging ourselves.
And do you think, is there a role, I mean, a lot of investors and financiers are becoming very risk averse, and I think, in terms of not having, big stars or, First Nations or other diverse people, you drop a name like Kate Blanchett and the door's open, right? So, we're still working to get to that calibre as a First Nation and diverse screen community. And I guess, is there a role or is there something that Screen Australia can do, to help or, give advice about encouraging stakeholders or potential investors to take that risk, or, how do we get them to kind of see beyond the name in that project and get, be willing to take that risk and go on that journey with you? Does that make sense?
Yeah, is that for me?
Wants to answer that?
Yeah, I think, I've worked across a lot of different sectors in the arts, and it's the same thing comes up all of the time about, you've got to have that name attached, and I do understand, it's about sales and confidence, and I think it's for us to advocate for those ones coming through and to make sure, people are seeing the amazing work that they're doing and getting it in front of people, because that builds confidence. And I think it is a balance. It's not going to change overnight, and they're not just going to go, yep, sure. But the calibre and the skill that is coming through, it cannot be stopped. So we just need to keep advocating and making sure that audiences are seeing it, so that it's not just 5 people's faces that we're seeing, it's many.
I think it's also about the story, because, if you look at something like the biggest success in scripted features last year was Talk to Me, there was no known cast really in that. It was about the story, and people turned up to see that story, and word of mouth was amazing for it, and it did brilliantly internationally. So completely agree with Jorjia, we do need to kind of keep growing kind of the pool of talent that we have, but the undeniability of a story, and a story that knows who its audience is and who it's speaking to, and that can do that really well, there's something really compelling about that as well, that other investors, other financiers, other people involved in it will see, and distributors, and and if everybody's going to make a few bucks out of it along the way, awesome. But the important thing is that it gets out to audiences, and that helps kind of grow the confidence in other Australian stories as well. I mean, even look at something like Bluey, where it's that has been such an amazing success, but one of the things it has done, I think, for Australian content more broadly is there's an acceptance that Australian voice tracks are not difficult. It always used to be Disney would always put in an American voice track. They didn't do that with Bluey. So now you've got people listening to Australian voices, and it's normal. So then selling an adult drama internationally, it's not kind of, we're going to have to subtitle this, what a nightmare. It's everybody's used to it. It's not a problem anymore because of Bluey. It's had a massive influence on that. So, I think there are steps that we can take, and lots of things have kind of impact on each other kind of going forward.
Yeah, I think definitely children's content has led the way on so many levels, in Australia and globally. But I also think another area that is kind of, groundbreaking and leading the way is online. Yet to have a new title. We'll see what that's going to be called. But Louise, you develop and commission, content for, digital platforms like YouTube and those types of things. It's already inherently a global audience, and I guess how do your projects that you're working with, or your creators that you're working with, navigate that and think about that, or is it just come naturally?
Yeah, I think what's really interesting about online, because in a lot of other places you'll be talking about domestic and international audiences, but when you're releasing something straight onto the internet, it's already global instantly. And I think that a lot of creators that we work with kind of don't even think about it. Like, it's just very natural. But the great thing about releasing online is that just keep saying online, is that you're getting that direct audience feedback instantly. So you're able to shape your content, see what your audience is reacting to, what they're enjoying, what they're not. And that's why Raka Raka, the Filippo brothers, are such a success, because they learnt about pacing online. They learnt about what their audience really enjoyed when they got bored, the amazing things you can see in analytics in the back end of all of the platforms. You can pinpoint the moment that your audience is dropping off. You can see in the comments who they love, which characters they want to follow, and it's just amazing to see. There isn't this online, there's not a barrier to Australian content or people being I don't want to watch Australian content. People love it. It's you see in the comments people commenting on the accent or how they'll write out an Australian accent online. And I think that Blue is a huge success, but also Heartbreak High has really opened the doors to Australian content. And our creators don't seem to have an issue with directly interacting with an international audience every day.
Fantastic. We've got some questions from the audience. Thank you. I was getting worried. This is one for you, Louise, from Marnie. I have an 8-episode comedy web series on YouTube. What's next? Any advice for her?
I would say, Marnie, you should email me and we can have a chat about your web series. Hi. I'll give you my card afterwards. But, if anyone wants to talk to us also, you can always email online at screenaustralia.gov.au. I would say about our department and all of our departments, I think that sometimes people hesitate to contact Screen Australia, but we're here to help you. We're here to talk to the industry. We want to make Australian content amazing, so please reach out and talk to us. We love talking to you. We love helping creators. We love talking to you about your content, how to make it successful, how to make it work, so please reach out.
And another question here is, how important are initiatives created by funders, and how can we have more, and how do you provide pathways for talent development?
Initiatives can be really important, especially where we're seeing either a gap or an opportunity that we want to kind of direct something to. So we do a lot of initiatives in the emerging space, especially, in online we've got programs that we do with YouTube, we've got ones that we do with SBS, we've done ones with TikTok, with Instagram, we've done them with, Bobby's got a couple that he's doing at the moment. There's one with the Australian Writers Guild that we're doing for writers, not in the very emerging space, but we have done them in that. We did one with NCIS Sydney. So we do them in lots of different areas. In our kind of enterprise and international area, we also do a lot of above-the-line talent development. So things like Global Producer Exchange that we do with Australians in film in LA, and obviously Enterprise is a big program that we're running. In the industry development area, so which is more below the line training, we've got very targeted programs there that will evolve over time. They're very focused on the roles that we know that we're being told are in real kind of critical numbers at the moment. So we're trying to kind of boost training around those, and that's really about mid-career roles for about 5 different roles, including post supervisors, location managers, production accountants, line producers. So we're directing quite a bit of funding there to support people in that kind of on-the-job training. So they can be really useful. We did one for in documentary. It's our second year of doing one with AIDC, where we're really looking for content for younger audiences. So, as everybody would be aware, TV audiences are kind of falling off. Public broadcasters, ABC certainly does kids content, preschool kids especially, really well. But most of their audience for adult content is, over 60 or over 70. So there's a huge gap of people that are not being serviced in that area. So we did a call out for content creators to pitch us projects that were for a younger audience. Not necessarily that the makers had to be younger, but the content had to be for that younger audience. So it's kind of where we're seeing where we're not getting things, where there's a gap, certainly for audiences as well. Those kinds of initiatives can be really important. Also to call out people who might not feel they're invited or that there's a place for them certainly in kind of funding. It can be intimidating applying for government funding, I think, especially if you don't have kind of a good experience of dealing with government. Government can be a nightmare to deal with, hello Centrelink. And it can be really off-putting, and, but we're not Centrelink. We are, but, if nobody's met us and kind of talked to us, it can be difficult to kind of overcome that barrier. So often an initiative can be very specific, that it's targeting a particular part of the community, whether it's, people with disability who are very underrepresented in the screen sector in terms of the applications we receive and, the people we see on screen or the stories that we have or the people that are writing those stories. So we do kind of do a number of those initiatives, and obviously Gender Matters has been nearly now a 10-year initiative that we've been kind of doing to really kind of redress the imbalance of women in the screen sector.
And just on that point about diversity and I guess inclusion, a question here is there a point of contact for diverse creatives from underrepresented communities?
At the moment, it's all of us. So, I mean, all areas of content are looking at that, and it's a really important thing for all of us. And we've got KPIs as part of our annual programming and reporting that we do around diversity and inclusion. Obviously, we'd had the Seeing Ourselves report that came out last year, that updated report from 2016. So it's something we've always got an eye on. In terms of Gender Matters, we track that every year, and in reality, internally, we're tracking it every quarter. So we're pulling out the stats in terms of who's applying and looking at that, so that we can kind of recalibrate as we're going forward. And if people are not applying, then we've got a job to do to make sure people know about our programs and that they're, make sure that people are eligible to apply, or they know how to apply, and do that kind of thing. So it's as much about us kind of reaching out into the community to kind of pull people in as for to say kind of, well, anybody can apply. I don't think that's really kind of good enough. We've got to be out there kind of welcoming people in so that people think there is a place for them in the programs that we run.
And do you think anytime soon, maybe, I don't know, it's controversial, but do you think you might create a specific group that focuses on, that focuses on those underrepresented communities to build that voice within the Australian screen sector?
Well, as part of, we've got a new CEO, we've got a new COO. These were some of the things that we're going to be looking at in the next couple of months is, kind of, as I said, have we got what's our strategy kind of over the next couple of years, and have we got the right structure to manage that in terms of what the sector needs and how we can best support the sector going forward. And that's certainly one of the areas that we are looking at.
Excellent. Rakel, you've been sitting there very patiently. I know you're busting to talk now. How much of a resource is your department, Marketplace? I didn't really know your department existed until I went to a roadshow last year. But how much of a resource is your department? And what are some of the things that you think our industry are doing really well, and what can we do better from your perspective and intelligence gathering?
So for those that don't know, like Dena didn't know, Marketplace works with producers in a few ways. Either come to us with your pitch deck when you're in late development and you're ready to go to Marketplace. We can help you partner or find partners from your international distributors or sales agents, domestically and internationally, and maybe look at their slate, what they've got, does it align with you, and help you understand. We keep talking about pathway to audience. It's really important, and it should be at the forefront of every single project, how you're thinking about it, because without an audience, no one's getting to see the amazing projects that are coming out of Australia. So we can then also, if you don't come to us early, but we want you to come to us early, you can then come to us as well, whether you've received Screen Australia funding or not. We're a resource to the whole industry, but obviously Screen Australia funded projects do take priority. And we can help you with your deal terms. So we can look at, I had a producer who hit me up in the corridors the other day and said to me, I've got my film, I've got a sales agent, can you please have a look at the LOI and the deal terms for me? And I'm like, yeah, happy to. So she pinged it to me. I sat there last night about 11 o'clock going through it, emailed back going, okay, here's a whole heap of suggestions. Because one thing at Marketplace, we record we're in a very privileged position. We get to see globally what is happening across all the Screen Australia content. So we record the sales agents, the distributors, the commissioning broadcasters, what commissions they're taking, what expenses they're taking, what marketing fees they're charging. Then we get to see all the post-financing sales of what territories are acquiring our content, and there's a lot of territories. They love our storytelling. You know, we look at 81% and higher of our sales come from international markets. So it's really important that you find the right partner who aligns with your storytelling, aligns with who they think is your audience, because unfortunately some projects don't work here in our own country, but they do exceptionally well internationally. And the majority of our recoupment, because I'm one of the only departments that has a budget to bring money into the agency to then give back to the funding programs, and it's from the international market. That's where our recoupment comes from. So everyone in this room should be looking and thinking about, with a global lens, your project, not necessarily your domestic audience, because our audience here is too small. You know, we've got a limited commissioning platforms here, we've got an amazing group of distributors here, but then internationally, whether you do a global SVOD or whether you're doing with your film or your TV and you're doing a territory by territory sale, which that model still works exceptionally well, you know, and we see more relicenses and things like that. So we get to see everything. So we get to see everything. Who's acquiring what rights in what territory, what they're paying for those. So when it comes to your post-financing stuff, so if we've helped you at the front end with your finance plan and got the deal terms, because if you are coming in for funding, it's really good to, none of us want producers negotiating with their backs against the wall, because we know how hard it is to fill your finance plan, fill your holes, sort out your gap financing, all that type of stuff. We appreciate that, and we don't like to be in that position when everyone's already on the back foot, including Screen Australia, because we're limited with our rounds and what money we have to spend. So the better terms that we can get for you, because basically everyone who sits on this panel and sits in the office is always advocating for the producer, but advocating a greater for industry globally, because we want it to thrive, we want it to be sustainable. We still want people, you know, like, I don't know whether we get to this later because we're running out of time, but there's so much to talk. So if you've got a project and you want to come and talk to me, please come and talk to me, grab me for a coffee or shoot me an email, and we'll help you wherever we can. But please just come to us early. Don't put yourself in a position. And, you know, the more seats you have at the table, more distributors that you're talking to internationally, then the better negotiating you have. And it's not always about the advance or the MG that's on offer, because sometimes depending on the deal, depending on the pieces of the puzzle of your finance plan, it might be better that it's a $0 advance, because then you're not recouping behind a large advance, and your commission is less because they're not putting money up front, and then they're not taking as big of expenses. There's so many different things to consider, and we can help you with all of that. But going back to the question of what do we do well? What do you guys do well? You guys are really agile, and it's great because you are, when things get thrown your way or financing falls over, we're really good at thinking on our feet. We're really good at telling Australian stories that do travel and do exceptionally well internationally and do bring money back to projects, including the producer and the investor. One thing that you need to do better is think about your audience with a global lens, and you need to come to Marketplace and Screen Australia a lot earlier than what you are.
Great, thank you. So another question is, what does Screen Australia consider a successful project? Is it an award or commercial success?
It can be lots of different things, and that is something that we talk about when we're if we're in assessment on a project. We look at what would the success look like for this project. Sometimes it can be about talent escalation. Sometimes it could be about, you know, it'd be awesome if this project was selected by an A-list festival. Sometimes it'll be something that's very broadly commercial. Sometimes it's about, you know, bigger audience recognition, either here or internationally, and sometimes it's about a stepping stone to a bigger project. It can be all kinds of different things, whether it's games or online, or a very an established feature film director. It changes on the project, and it's never the same kind of set of criterion of success. It's very much a bespoke thing that we think about. Same in development. I mean, we look at, and we think about what are the deliverables for development. When would we, consider that something has been really successful in this stage of development? And it's the same for all of our projects. We look at everything individually.
Great. I just wanted to circle back around to the talent development thing. I got a lot of questions come up here. But one I had first was for Richard. Like, are there any specific kind of initiatives or things that you're looking at to develop the factual documentary space or creatives?
So Grainne mentioned Fresh Cuts, which we've done in partnership for the last 2 years with AIDC. I'm 8 weeks into the role, and I know that I've been talking to the team. I think we could, ideally, I'd like to be able to do probably 2 initiatives a year. We are looking at doing something in the disability space, but that's very kind of seed stage. After this conference, I'll be going back and kind of drilling down a little bit more into that idea that's been kind of percolating with the team for 3 or 4 months. So I want to get the ball rolling on that more seriously. And then, looking for another one. I think my target is 2 a year. So if anybody has any ideas, would love to hear from anyone on that.
I would just jump in as well. In online, we also fund factual content, which can be a great way for filmmakers to get something funded through us. If they're a bit newer, it might be smaller scale, more achievable, so it's a great way to get a start as well.
Bobby, I know there's been a lot of incentives for screenwriters. You have any new ones on the horizon that support emerging screenwriters?
We're always looking at opportunities for initiatives for above the line in general, writer, producer, director. But certainly recently it's more writers. So we have the Emerging Writers Incubator, which is in its 3rd year with SBS, and we're reviewing what their program now looks like moving forward, because it's a program only for 3 years. So it's kind of reevaluating whether it's still relevant. It's still relevant for emerging writers to be placed in host companies for 12 months. Are they getting the most of it? Is there a pipeline for them getting their first credit? So these are things that we're constantly looking at. Another initiative is the South Australia Film Commission, Film Labs Voices for feature films. Announcement will go out next week in terms of the successful projects. But again, this is like focusing on story and writers and how those projects can progress. There's an opportunity also to move that into production funding as well. So the other thing also, just naturally, because of audience being the focus, there's an opportunity for us to look at audience design. And this is specifically for scripted feature films. So that's currently in conversation at the moment. And certainly focusing on producers and above-the-line teams who's got scripted feature films, who's going to market internationally, and understanding what the actual audience design strategy would be for that. So we're always looking at different kind of initiatives. The other extension to what we do is we do attend a lot of engagement with tertiary educations and communities. So like recently I was part of a panel that was organised by Screen Illawarra in regional New South Wales to do a pitch session. And I was working, there was a panel session with Hayley from Screen New South Wales, producer from Unless, and Easy Tiger. So sometimes with my department, it's also just sharing knowledge. So for me and my team, we go out, we talk about what makes, competitive applications, but also what makes competitive storytelling and the different variations to that, and also feeding back in terms of pitches, in terms of career escalations and things like that.
Oh yeah, I was going to ask you next.
Not Kanye, but grab the mic. Just to let people know, also with our department, initiatives like touching on all the amazing initiatives, we also have an ongoing internship First Nations opportunity that you can come in any time. And the thing that I love seeing, it's not just the traditional model of an attachment for production for 2 weeks. We're really sort of moving away from that and doing more considered long-form attachments so that our filmmakers can really get the most out of it with mentorship. But also, we've seen in the last few, people have been travelling to Italy, on these amazing, life-changing, career-changing opportunities on Chef's Table in the factual documentary sphere, as well as our mob that want to do genre writing and feeling like, we're a niche over here. I want to work with the best in LA, so having that one-on-one mentorship, being in writers' rooms, so you can really tailor it to suit what you want to do to uplift your career. And we also have industry support, so that's, could be really varied, but really putting in, say, a film festival, maybe in your own community, like there's other support, and you can have that, I think, 50,000 every financial year for industry support, as well as we've just done our first facts doco factual initiative, and that was with 10 Paramount, and that started last year, but our teams, the 6 of them, are just going into production now, and it's a huge cohort from WA, which is really exciting to see. They're all diverse, but what's going on in the water over there? They're doing amazing stuff, so we're really supporting them through development phase, seed funding, through to production, and then getting it up on 10 Play. And just a little bit of a hint, I can't say too much, but a lot of our community have been saying we want scripted initiatives, and maybe some are coming, and also initiatives to support upskilling our producers as well.
Hope you get a good facilitator for that. We've got 3 minutes left, and I have so many questions, but I'm going to try and get as much as I can in. But this one, I guess, is for Grainne, still on the professional development and talent pathways opportunities. We do a lot of initiatives, I guess, or programs with LA, but are there other opportunities for talented Australian storytellers outside of the US?
Absolutely. I guess one of the areas that we address that in is through enterprise people. So for individuals who want to find a placement, it absolutely doesn't have to be in LA. We've got somebody who currently works in the online space, Black Sand Pictures, who got enterprise last year, and their focus is very much on the Middle East. So they've been at the Red Sea Festival and travelling to Saudi a couple of times in the last year, looking for those business opportunities and those partnerships in terms of making the content that they want to make. Obviously, we've got all of East Asia on our doorstep. There are huge opportunities in other parts of the world, and the Ampere analysis sessions that anybody went to during the week, talked about the growth areas for streamers are Sub-Saharan Africa, East Asia, and the Middle East. All the other areas, all the other parts of the world are really kind of considered mature markets, so their focus is going to be on developing content in those areas. We've got co-production treaties with 17 different countries, including a number in the East Asia region. So I think there are huge opportunities to partner with producers in those countries as well. If people are looking for professional development opportunities, or they're looking to design them themselves, because people obviously have their own networks and ambitions and ways to do things, talk to us, have a look at some of the things that we do. Some of those kind of self-directed things can be supported certainly through enterprise.
Fantastic. Unfortunately, we're nearly at time, but there's so many good questions. I'm going to squeeze one in for Louise, because I think it's a really good question, and I've just lost the bloody thing. But it is about, content. Sorry, I'm going to really ruin this question. But it's about the, creation. Sorry, let me find it. Basically, it's about YouTube creators who are making their own content already on stage, what's the online? What's the benefit of them coming into Screen Australia and working with your department?
Yeah, well, I think there can be a lot of benefits. Like, there are so many diverse YouTube creators, so many things you can be on YouTube. The great thing that we have an initiative specifically for YouTubers called Skip Ahead, and that's something that the Rakel twins actually came through, and it's really a chance for YouTubers to create something that's bigger than anything they've done before. It's obviously not for everyone, but it's if you do want to be a filmmaker, if you want that career, it can really help you to, work with a bigger budget for the first time. It can help you with story skills. It can help to just give you some support and answer questions that you might have when you've just been doing everything on your own for a long time. So yeah, it can have. There can be huge impacts on your career and your success as a creative.
Okay, great. And so just as we're wrapping up, I'd like to get from each of you, what are your priorities for the next 12 months? And please distill it down to 3 words. And I will move on from you if it's past 3. Let's start with you, Louise. What's the department's priorities?
My 3 words are state, diversity, and talent.
Rakel?
Oh, that's a tough one. I'm going to say gaps in knowledge.
Knowing audience is better and what they're doing. So I'll give you 3 areas rather than 3 words. Knowing audience is better.
You get a pass.
Global connections and business sustainability.
Richard?
Pass my probation.
That's only for the next 2 months.
Over to you, Bobby.
Story, talent, diversity.
What's the last one? Diversity.
Upskill, advocate, bold.
Did you just put 2 words into one? All right. I would like to thank our guests for sharing their knowledge today. And thank you all for coming, and I hope you have a good rest of Screen Forever. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Rodrigo Vidal-Dawson from Blackfish. Let me first welcome everyone and do a small acknowledgement to country. I'd like to begin with paying respects to traditional owners, elders past, present and emerging. And it is my distinct pleasure to introduce Rosie, who'll be running a beautiful panel of incredible leaders. So I'll now jump off and all yours, Rosie.
Are we on? There we go. Thanks, Rodrigo. And thank you, SPA, for having us. I'd also like to pay my respects to the Yugambeh people of the land that we are on, to elders past and present, and to pay my respects to all and welcome all First Nations people who are joining us here today. My name is Rosie Lord. I am moderating this esteemed panel. And thank you for joining us so early on what is the last day of Scream Forever. I hope everyone's feeling okay after whatever they got up to over the last couple of days. Before we get started, I just want to make sure that everyone's aware we will be taking questions across this panel. And I'm happy to be a bit flex with it and roll questions in as they come up, knowing that we're speaking with 4 people from various different states and territories, that a question might not make sense to wait until the end. So if you do have a question that comes up, I'll try and keep my eyes on the app. You can download the app if you haven't already, the Attendee mobile app, and you can go to the session, you can put your questions straight in and they'll come to me on this fancy little tablet over here. Or if you prefer, you can just put your hand up and we can run a mic to you. We can have this quite casual. I would like to start by asking each of our panellists to go through their names, their roles, and the different agencies that they're at. For anyone who doesn't know, this session will be partially a 101. Obviously, I don't think that anyone's a total newbie in the room, but just in case there's some key information that people may have missed along the way, or maybe you're interested in a state agency that you haven't had a relationship with previously. So we will do some nuts and bolts, but we'll also try and get to the nitty-gritty a little bit. We've only got 45 minutes or so we can't do everything, and there will be lots of please read the website and actually read the guidelines. So that will probably be the biggest takeaway. But yes, as questions come up, please do let us know. Why don't we just start by going down the line, if you'd like to introduce yourself, and then also, because each of the state agencies, state and territory agencies, operate in very unique ways. And I think it's really important for people to be aware of what those relationships are that the agencies have with government, with the industry that they're reporting or they're supporting. That would be really fantastic.
Great, thanks Rosie. So my name is Jenny Hughes and I'm the Director of Screen Territory. We're at the top of Australia, of course, vast in space, small in population. So we work within government, so we're much like, which Alex will tell you about in a minute, we work right within government, so we're not a separate agency, we're not a not-for-profit, we actually work within government. So we have a much larger overlay of bureaucratic process, but we try and process all of our screen applications and all those kind of things as quickly as possible and efficiently as possible. We actually have an annual program, which I think is very similar to everyone else, which covers a whole suite of different support. Are we going to go through, do you want me to go through that?
No, we'll go through that
We'll do it later?
Okay,
I'll pass over to Jackie.
Hi, I'm Jackie Feeney, the CEO of Screen Queensland. I can see a lot of the Screen Queensland team here. So the Brains Trust is here. Woo! So yeah, in terms of how we're structured, we are actually a P&L company under the Corporations Act, but we have a single shareholder, which is the Queensland government. So depending on which, we can we have a little bit of independence from government, but not really, because all of our money comes from government. And what I'd probably just say as an opening comment is, as a number of you would be aware, Queensland has a really strong history of production attraction. It's a very big part of what we do. And for us, it's about getting that balance right in supporting the local sector. But I think for this room is also to understand our production attraction isn't just Hollywood. It can be attracting other states to come and make content in Queensland. So a lot of the benefits that we offer up to the international marketplace can be offered up to interstate producers. And then the other part I would just add is we're very open, warm and welcoming bunch of people, and we like to, we think there's a lot we can do by just having the conversation early and directing you. So yes, please read our website, but also get in contact would be the message.
Hi, I'm Holly Truman. I'm CEO of Screen Canberra, so probably the smallest of the agencies. We run as a not-for-profit, so we actually sit outside the government, but we're funded by the government, and so we're quite flexible in what we can do. We've got a little bit of autonomy from government, but obviously have a strong link in with them as well. So I'll pass you over to...
Hey all, I'm Alex Sangston. I'm the Executive Manager of Screen Tasmania and Foundation member of the Tasmanian Devils AFL team. And if anybody wants to join, you should do so. Memberships are only $10. See the website for details. I'm not really supposed to be here today because the Tasmanian government is in caretaker mode pending an election on Saturday. Screen Tasmania isn't an agency, we're more like NT. Screen Tas is a business unit of the Department of State Growth, which means I sit alongside the people who regulate the mines, work out which trees to cut down, build the bridges, and then there's us crazy little creatives on the side. But because we're in government and there is an election on Saturday, that means everything that I say is covered by this overall comment that we don't know what next week looks like, don't know who the government is going to be and what changes they might make to what we do. So I will be speaking strictly about the way things are at the moment for Screen Tas, but all bets are off in a couple of days' time. As they are today.
Yes, we have 2 days that this information is going to be valid, and currently Alex is a hologram, so... Amazing. Well, with that in mind, what I would love to do is quickly go through the standard doorways of funding that people have access to. So we're talking about development support, production investment support, if there's any post support or PDV or whatever you want to call it, across scripted, documentary, kids and games, who's doing what, and if briefly as you go through the list of those, I know that's a lot to keep in your brains, but if they're rolling deadlines or if they're scheduled deadlines, currently, Alex, obviously you have no idea, but just so we can, and obviously all of that information is on the website, but just so we can do a top line and get it through, that would be fantastic. Do you want to start, Jenny?
Yeah. Sitting in a good spot, aren't I?
You are, Jenny, sorry. You're gonna, I will flip it at some point.
No, that's really good. That's fine, I don't mind.
I'm not sure if there's much point starting with Alex.
True. Look, we have a suite of programs that we offer for our screen practitioners in the Northern Territory and also interstate practitioners as well. So we go career development, for example, so that's really great. So that's developing your career, could require a mentorship or going to work with another company or something, or even travelling to do training. So that's one of them. Travel, we have a big travel budget. Being in the Territory, we encourage our screen practitioners to travel extensively to SPA, to AIDC, to MIF 37 South. We support a whole lot of practitioners to go to MIF 37 South as well, with Postscript Direct. We have the attachment program, which is getting bigger and bigger as we've got more productions coming in, very important. Development, which is great for our practitioners, so seed, which is 5,000, we have up to 30,000. We don't recoup our development, which is really important, so when it goes into production.
Can I ask you a question on that? For anyone who's interstate and looking at potentially having a project based in the NT, can they access development funding?
Only if it's a co-production.
Okay.
Because it's really about supporting our NT practitioners. We don't have a huge pot of money, so it's very important that we look after our NT practitioners. So if it's a co-production, yes, that pipeline's open to you. I know that, because we don't recoup it, it's actually very good. We've actually got production, which is when you go into production, so anything up to 100,000 is a grant. Post 100,000, we can actually determine if it's got good commercial prospects that we will go into an equity investment. We have production attraction incentive program, which is for productions over $2 million in the Territory. And they're really about those big inbounds, and they're all about employment. and spend on goods and services. So what do they bring to the territory? We look at those really largely with tourism as well. And I think that might be about it.
I think there's something interesting to talk about with yours, just from previous conversations we've had, but your relationship with Tourism NT and how they can work alongside what you're doing with productions.
Look, we have a very, very good relationship with Tourism NT, and that's been nurtured over a number of years that I've been there. And I deliberately went and did that. I lost my wonderful former head of tourism to Jackie, but anyway, over to Queensland. He's actually brilliant. I think he's going to do a different role, but he's fantastic. But look, they've been really open, and because we work in the same division, much like Alex, he's in that I forget what it is now, industry business unit. State growth. We're in the Department of Industry, Tourism and Trade, so we're in mining, agribusiness, all of that, but we're also in tourism, so tourism is our sister sort of organisation, and they're great. So what we do is we bring them in very, very early into the conversation with any productions we're going into, and I mean years out. We're doing Kangaroo with Studio Canal. We brought them in 2 years prior, so we brought them in right at the beginning so they could start working with the Studio Canal team on looking at how they can amplify those marketing campaigns with their P&A campaign theatrically, and likewise with the streamers as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jenny.
Okay, so all those programs that you ran through, development, production, post, regional support's quite small for us right now, as top-ups, drama, documentary, kids, games, etc. And then that split between supporting local Queensland companies and Queensland projects, where we sort of work more on the development side and screen finance. All of our programs are open nationally, but there are tests around, or we're starting to strengthen the focus. So often it's driven by budget and capacity in the system. The timing, we're always open, but the decision making is tied to our board meeting schedule. We have a board on Screen Queensland, and our board timetable is on our website, so applications are open all the time, but you need to hit deadlines for the decision making. And
can we circle back just momentarily?
Yeah.
You touched on the fact that you're prioritising, or there's an extra criteria when you're looking at local creatives. We had a great conversation about Screen Queensland's focus on really building up the capacity of the local industry, and for sure, absolutely, Queensland's been had an incredible history of business of projects coming in. How are you shifting that focus a little bit at the moment?
Yeah, well, look, there's a whole part of our work which is attraction work, and what's probably important to understand is most of that work that we do is incentive-led. So as I said before, same that we would do for international, and it's open to anyone in Australia. So you come in and you have to spend the money and you're paid out at the end. Whereas on the other side, which is in our core operations, is really where we're doing more investment or, development, screen finance. Now that has been open, but it's that buckets of money, if I could put it that way, that we are increasingly looking to upweight that investment towards Queensland projects. And I know we'll get to initiatives, I think, but things like we've just announced a business enterprise fund, and we've really tightened up our rules about a definition of Queensland companies. So I'd say as a skew, we are at a point, we feel, in our evolution that we want to really strengthen Queensland people and Queensland companies, but also very much open to interstate companies who want to come in and make films in Queensland. And that's where we need to talk to you, because we need to help you navigate through and say, you're going to sit better on an incentive model because it's just come and make it here in Queensland. Or if we can see real Queensland benefits, which could be Queensland story, Queensland script, key Queensland talent, and we'll work you through with that, or even matchmake, help introduce you into, Queensland creatives that might help tip you over onto that side of the ledger. So the other thing I should say is we are reviewing our guidelines in terms of trade, and our target date is to have new guidelines in terms of trade in 1 July. So we did a major consultancy in the last few months to get feedback from industry about where do we need to sort of update. And we're looking at things like more grant, less equity, all those things that other screen agencies have done. So a lot of the programs that we have been in place for some time. It's just, I think, us as a decision-making body, we're choosing to upweight it and give preferential treatment to projects that have a real Queensland benefit.
Wonderful. Just to clarify that, for in case that got a little murky, so companies that are, no, it's really complex. It's really complex policy, and just breaking it down into nuts and bolts, it being Thursday morning. So what you're saying is projects don't necessarily need to be in partnership with Queensland production companies to come in and to access funding. However, if they are, or if there are other stronger elements really building out the benefit to Queensland, whether that's a Queensland story, Queensland IP, Queensland creatives, showcasing Queensland environments.
Well, maybe I'll use Black Snow as an example, which was made by Goldpost Pictures. It's set in Proserpine, and it had a First Nations or South Sea Islander storytelling history, and it was, for us, it was working with them and saying, you need to have the right people involved to tell this story. You need to hire Queensland. You can't just be a Sydney company and come in and make that story. You need Queensland creatives and writers in the mix. You need them in the writing room. You need people to get involved early in that process. The other thing, just to add on to make even more complexity, but welcome to my world, is we are looking to collaborate a lot more with Trade and Investment Queensland. So we've done some work on encouraging companies to come into Queensland, but also tourism and strengthening our relationships so that we're working across the whole of government. So we're a little bit we're clear ourselves internally, but we are a little bit in flux in terms of how we're amending what we do. So we're a little bit of in transition stage right now that will be much clearer by 1 July. But I think what we've learnt from our successes like Troppo for the ABC, Boy Swallows Universe, they're not Queensland companies that made those shows, but they have a real Queensland benefit, hired a lot of locals, but really in the above the line and below the line, not just coming in and doing crew. So I think that's that shift more towards above the line, and where we can see real benefit because it's Queensland starring as Queensland. And I think, as I've said on a couple of times here, I feel that very strongly that Queensland's been undershot, and Brisbane is not a city that's been on screen that often. And the other thing I would say is, as a state, we are geographically dispersed, and we're not defined by our capital city. So the Gold Coast is strong, Sunshine Coast, Noosa, Brisbane, far north Queensland. So we want to spread that screen sunshine around the state, and we have to. That's a lot of work to do that. It's not just coming to Sydney or Melbourne and it's done.
Now, a question has come through asking if what your thoughts are on requiring productions to have a local co-producer.
I'm looking at Belinda. We don't require that.
No, exactly.
But we're sort of more on the encourage than require. I'd say would be and it might be not just the co-producer. It might be the writer or the director or Belinda's the expert on the local talent. Yeah, key creative. So that above the line, which could be producer, director, writer. Okay. And just finally, I won't go into it now, to tackle it later, but that I know as all screen agencies, we're doing a lot on talent development and production attractions and things like that we spend a lot of time on.
Yeah. Yes, let's keep moving because we've got a lot to get through, but thank you for that.
Can you,
recap?
Let's do a recap.
It's been a while. The standard doorways of funding, development, production, post across all the tranches, and regional included, as well as career progression. But we'll get to initiatives later.
So Screen Canberra, we do a lot of development. We have in the past done a lot, both very early development, and I would much rather to have later development, so we getting things through. We're in a strange position because we're funded by we've got ACT, we've got arts funding and business and innovation. So we've got this real pool. Canberra want to be known as the creative capital of Australia. So that is important, and there is a space in arts to go, really, really early if you're from Canberra. In the development space, we have sort of like anyone from above the line, if they're attached to it, that will open the door to you. We will talk to you. Because we don't have a huge number of people in that above the line position. So, we're really wanting to create that sort of space. We have in the past had screen attraction funds, which has, worked really well for Canberra. We're coming into an election year, so, watch this space. I want to talk to you and I want to hear from you. Like if there's something that you've got that you think might work in Canberra, talk to me really early because we're small and we have a really easy access into the really high up change makers. If there's something big, you let me know, but let me know early. We don't do games at the moment, which is something that I'm really looking at. Per capita, we have more games developers in Canberra than anywhere else. So that's something that I'm, definitely looking at and what we can do, because we're very interested in that innovation space. It's a real push for the Canberra government. So yeah,
awesome.
That's probably.
Thanks, Holly.
Me? We do the same sort of stuff as other people, the other agencies, development, production, games, industry development, that sort of thing. Key things to know about us: our development program, project development program, is open to projects that have at least a meaningful creative or financial partnership with a Tasmanian producer, production company or key creative. That's how we lock it down a little bit. We don't do early stage development, intermediate and advanced only, preferably matched. Our production support program is under 50K is a grant, and over 50 is investment. Broadly speaking, our programs are quarterly rounds alongside our Screen Tas Expert Advisory Group meetings.
Amazing. Alex, can you keep the mic for a second? We're going to go straight down the line and talk about ratios.
Ratios?
Yeah, spend
to investment. So in our production support program, if you're coming in for a grant, up to 50K, the majority of the budget has to be Tasmanian spend. Above 50,000, provided as production investment, is required to be a 4-to-1 spend ratio, investment to spend ratio for Tasmanian expenditure for scripted, and 3-to-1 for animation and non-scripted.
That's big.
We don't have post. So we kind of have to be low.
Yeah, okay, yep. Amazing. Holly?
Yeah, well, I am looking at the guidelines because of this. We're in the same. We're at 1 to 7 at the moment, but it's look at Jenny. Jenny's no. So that's definitely something that I'm looking at, and as I sort of emphasise, it's a guideline.
Can I just get a show of hands? Do people understand when we're talking about these 1 to 7, 1 to 4 ratios? No, we've got some shaking heads. So for every $7 someone spends in the ACT, Holly, you'll invest $1 to that. Yeah. And so then when Alex was talking the 1 to 4, for every $4 you spend in Tasmania, they'll invest $1 to it. So
a maximum of.
Maximum, sorry.
Yeah.
Obviously, eligibility criteria, assessment criteria, competition, blah, blah, blah.
Read the fine print.
Yeah.
But yeah, we are looking to change that because it doesn't work. We're regional really in where we sit, so we need to be playing in that regional space.
Okay, thank you. Jackie?
I think you could pass over me on ratios. We focus on Queensland spend, QAPE. So everything about what we do is driven by the amount that you're planning to spend in Queensland.
But you don't have ratio guidelines for how much?
If we do, I haven't seen them. Have we got them?
Yeah, the percentage, no. Okay, watch this space is what I'm hearing.
But what I would probably say, I think one of the reasons that we're sort of maybe gathered here without Vic Screen or Screen New South Wales is we are, despite Queensland being quite a big state in production attraction, I think we've all got interesting challenges around building our local sector and how we do that. So, you know, I think we're all going to be using what levers we have. Ratios is one you're using. It's not one we're using, but I think we're all focused on how we're building above the line, below the line talent, and that's not it.
And sorry, just to recap, because you said before there's an interesting relationship between which is grants and which is investment. Can you just...
well, that's something we're in the middle of reviewing. So we don't have as much grant focused. We tend to do investment.
Gotcha.
But we're looking at that right now.
Okay, thank you. Jenny?
And we do 1 to 4, so it's really based on your the $4 you've got to spend is really on goods and services and employment. That's pretty much it. So what vendors you're using, what employment. We have a big focus on territory and crew because we've got to build that base. So it's really, really important. We are absolutely hands-on when it comes to that area. So Sebastian's been away, so I'm in the crew handler now.
Amazing. Fun times.
Yeah, because we track people's career trajectory. We want to see you go from one production to the next one to the next one. So that's a really important element of that 1 to 4 spend.
Fantastic.
We'd have minimum spend if it's attraction.
Okay.
Yeah. Different.
Do you want to talk about that? Because we might have people in the room who are looking for...
Read our guidelines on the
Great, okay. Read the guidelines.
Can
Excellent.
I just drop
yes,
something
Alex,
in?
yes, please.
Thanks, Rosie. It's really important for people in the room to be careful that every one of us will define expenditure slightly differently. So I'd read the guidelines.
And I had to resist when we were explaining the ratios for a moment then to be like, okay, if it's a 4 to 1, then you've got 5 components. So then you're talking about 20% of the budget being, but it's not, because obviously your budget's going to be made up from different elements from different places. So it actually doesn't equate to a percentage. But we do need a clearer language than these ratios that we're talking, because it is convoluted.
And look, they're really defined. We will withhold money at the end to make sure everything's audited if they're big budgets, to make sure that the people meet that spend. And if they don't meet the spend, then we will not pay out the full amount of money. So it's really important that you look at that. And just adding to that, we're a little more flexible, I think, with our local NT screen practitioners. So, you know, we'll be a little more flexible with that.
We are too. Definitely.
Discretionary uplift is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
So can we talk about some of the more poignant, fun things that are possibly happening? Do you have any initiatives going on? What's open at the moment? What priority areas is the agency excited for? Any particular focuses that might be key information and critical information for people in the room to help them discuss their projects in a way that might have a competitive edge? Yeah,
Okay,
Jenny?
okay. Look, most of our initiatives at the moment are really aimed at Territorians, I suppose, in a way. I mean,
Do we have Territorians in the room? Well, yep, a couple of hands.
There you go. And I'll tell you about it. Anyway, we're using other people, though. We're using people from Queensland and stuff and New South Wales to provide services. But look, we do the Spark initiative. So it's a $30,000 short film initiative for each company. We're doing, I think, 3 this year. We bring in Panavision. We bring in about $200,000 worth of equipment and all of that, which is great. We use the Post Lounge and Trackdown to help with that. But the other thing we do is the NT Screen Summit, which is kind of good as well. So that happens in September on the back of Darwin International Film Festival, and that's when all of the Territorians are there. So if you come up for that's free, and it's on the back of the festival. So that's one thing that people go to.
Let's talk about that. I might be coming to the festival.
Yeah,
yes,
I think,
Jackie?
well, the big thing, which has been much discussed at this conference is our Business Enterprise Fund, which we're all very excited about, and particularly because it's up to $150,000 per annum times 3 years for Queensland-based companies with 75% of their staff based in Queensland. And we're closing a lot of loopholes for people who wish to set up Queensland offices. And also you have to have had your business operating for at least 6 months before you put in for these guidelines. So we've really tightened up on that, and it is absolutely targeted at Queensland companies. And we've had a lot of people ask us creative, explorations of that. And we're very clear, and again, we'd say read the guidelines, but we're very clear, and that is deliberately targeted at Queensland people and companies. And certainly when I first started in this job and I went around and met with the local industry, they said, And this is, I think, something as a screen agency, we get behind projects. Like a lot of what I was talking about before is backing projects, but the big message we got from the local industries, we need support as people and companies, and that is what this business enterprise fund is designed to do, is to back our people to be, the local industry to be more sustainable and to create, and pitched at emerging but also established. Like we want our companies to scale and strengthen, and that's designed to do that. Other focus areas for us is First Nations. We have separate funds set aside. We've created a separate unit that reports into me, but all other creative programs report into Belinda Burns, who's up the back there. That includes games. We've set up an online unit so that we're now funding social projects. So we're really trying to expand. Then, we might get to that later, but really a strong focus on upskilling people and pitch training and how to become more entrepreneurial and how to succeed and be resilient. That's a real focus for us because it's about, we want to play to win now as a local industry and sit alongside the work that we do internationally. And again, when I started in this role, people going, are you for the local industry or the international industry? And I was like, I'm an and, not an or person. We can do both, but without doubt, we feel we have to strengthen the local Queensland sector, and we're really committed to doing that.
Fantastic.
Well, we've got this, I haven't been in the job that long, as same with Jackie. So, I'm really looking at where we move forward for the next 10 years. Excited that we've just moved in with the National Film and Sound Archive, so there will be... So we're sitting alongside them, and it's what sort of opportunities can we do working with them. I'm from a documentary space. I look at this. I look at the space in the Canberra industry, and we're hitting a very high in that documentary. We've got a lot of education institutions there, so I think documentaries is something that will definitely be, supporting and with NFSA and that sort of thing, we can really make that a bit of a focus for us. Canberra's a fairly progressive place. We're proud to be so obviously progressive. So we've got some initiatives coming up in the LGBTQIA+ space.
Can I ask about that? Is that only for Canberra-based production companies, or could that be from external in partnership with? Do you know any of the details around that?
I can't talk about that yet.
Okay, great. All right.
And also sustainability is, really, really key for me. We're 100%, our energy is 100% renewable. We've got, very, very proactive sort of reaching zero targets and that sort of thing in Canberra. So I see that's the sort of thing that we'll be focusing on, and it's, these are things that we're doing, the government's doing, and that we can sort of, help those conversations. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Alex, is there anything you can talk about?
I can say that while Canberra might be 100% renewable energy, Tassie's over 100% renewable energy. We feed renewable energy into the grid.
But we've got a maggot farm.
You do. I've been there. So, look, obviously I can't talk about strategy going forward because I don't know what it looks like. Historically and strategically over the last few years, our focus has been continuity of production, all about building capacity within the crew base. There's no reason to think that is going to change in the long term. I think in terms of initiatives, what we've done in the past have been leverage our own limited resources with what opportunities exist elsewhere. So one of our favourites that we did last year was called Discovering New Online Voices, which had support from Screen Oz and Screenworks ran it for us, which was sort of a Hunger Games style pitching of web series, and one of them is and given substantial development funds off the back of that.
But without the javelins, there weren't any javelins involved in your Hunger Games?
No, there were no javelins, no. At least not that I'm going to admit to. But yeah, I mean, like everybody right now, BTL Crew is a lot of what we do. We're looking at how much we support emerging ATL, but I can't really talk about it because I don't know where our policy focus is.
I've been having a couple of questions come through on the app, but I'm sure there are many more burning questions going on. So either put them into the app or I'll swing back out and see if anyone has any hands going up in the audience. No one's buzzing right now. Okay, cool. Excellent. Well, what I would love... I'm assuming everyone's in the room because they want to access more money. Like, that's the basic reason why people are here. So,
really? Producers?
What? Never. We don't need money. Ever. So what would you... I'd love to do a top tips round around how... From the applications you've been seeing recently, and of course there's standard tips of like how to make a better application, but from what you've been seeing recently, how would you really encourage people to strengthen their applications? Yes, Alex.
Oh, I've got a good one for you. Okay. What you're going to discover here is all of us in our application forms actually have little tricks in there which are deliberately designed to make it easier for us to make our decisions. And they trip people up all the time. In our case, the one that everybody gets wrong is in our development application form, we require a set of development notes. Just a one-pager. And the idea of it is for the applicant to outline the strengths and weaknesses of the project as it stands and how they're going to deal with it. So the idea is that you're engaging in the weaknesses of your project because we're going to see them because that's our job. And if you're not aware of them, that's a problem. So we really want people to be quite open and honest about that. It's not a problem that there are problems in it. You wouldn't be applying for development funding if it was perfect. But what people tend to do is apply with a list of, we will convene a writer's room and we will do that for 3 days and then we will go away and rewrite and then we will deliver a draft to you. That's not development notes. That's a deliverable list. So I think my tip and trick is have a look at the application form and try and figure out why we're asking the questions that we ask, because that will make your application much stronger.
Thanks.
Coming from producing, the first thing I look at is, does your budget add up? And is it the same as on your finance plan as it is in your budget? So, look, and that's easy. Like, as soon as I see that and it doesn't make any sense, that's out. It's out. So really understand what budgets you're putting in, because for me, that's the first place that I will start.
Yeah, the attention to detail is really paramount.
I'm just going to say, as a screen agency, we don't want your relationship with us to be about money and that transactional. In fact, that would be a bad relationship with a screen agency. And we actually like to be in a relationship with in the way that we, some of the things that happen at Screen Queensland that are my absolute favourite things, like Phil Enkelmeyer runs a thing called Writers Write. And, everyone in the screen agency is trying to build the skills and resilience of the people. And we want to understand, we would hope we would know what you're trying to achieve. So from an application point of view, yes, get all the basics right, but really understand your audience and what you're making it for. And to me, that's like the most important thing. But, I think we're really thinking about how do we work with our people and help. And we don't want to be there as just check writers. And we don't hire people who work at Screen Queensland who are check writers. And we are right in there helping people with their strategies and their thinking around their projects. But to go back to Writers Write, to me that's like, one of our people in our team just decided that our writers needed support, and once a month he invites the writers into our boardroom and they write silently and collectively. And it's one of my favourite days. I walk past and go, oh, there's the writers in writing. And he also arranges, guest speakers, and we're trying to do a lot more of that. Like, we're mindful too that a lot of the decision makers domestically are down south, and, we're trying to bring them in and invite people to come in and give that exposure to the industry. But I think it would be a fail if you're just submitting an application to Screen Queensland. Not saying this is a fail, but, I would say it's just my sense of it is if you hadn't been in conversation with someone in the agency, then you're doing yourself a disservice, and we'd probably go, where's this come from? What's this about? We want to know all that information around, and in fact, maybe even help your application get better. We're not here to judge you on a piece of work you put in. You should be in discussion with us, and that would be a very strong message.
Fabulous.
Oh, look, we're similar to all of this. I mean, if you combine all of that, that's exactly what we look at. I mean, there's no kind of we don't just tick a box going down that list. It's really about working with your screen practitioners. Also, screen practitioners looking at all those things, commercial ideas, budget, every single area, and you've got to put some effort into it. We have a limited amount of funding. We don't have a huge bucket of money, so it's highly competitive. So make it as competitive as possible. Come in and see, read the guidelines, read terms of trade if you're new to it. Come in and meet with our screen industry development managers, talk it through, and they will help you and they'll guide you. And it's about that guidance. We want the same as Jackie and Holly and Alex. We want successful screen practitioners. We want your project not to just stick in development, but to go through the development process and to get commissioned and to be produced. And that's what we're after. I think that's a commonality amongst all of us.
Wonderful. Oh, a question. Yes, please. 1 second, Louise. We'll just grab your mic.
What's the best way to create a relationship?
Thanks, Cooper.
I'd start by coming to the annual conference Screen Forever and connect with your agency in person. Bingo.
Well, Screen Queensland, we have lots of coffee mornings that we hold out at our studio. We run our own event in the frame. You can get through to, I don't want to burden people in the organisation, but you can get through to people and, to say, I've got a project, could I come and speak to you about it? That's what we're there for. We're actively seeking to grow the local sector, and also nationally, people come and talk to us like, hey, we think there's got this Queensland edge to it, or we're thinking of filming up here. I don't know who was at the Ron Howard session, but he called out Naomi, who runs our production attraction team, because they were even Ron, they were in discussions with us. They don't just come in and want to check, So it's then we can guide you a bit and understand what you're trying to achieve.
So how do you get on the list for the
production attraction of
things
which
like that? Coffee mornings and things like that.
Okay. Get on our website, get on our newsletter. It's an open invitation. It's not you have to be on our website. You have to be in the communication loop, following us socially. So yes, please get on. And in fact, we do sometimes have interstate visitors to these events, particularly if we've got a guest speaker. But yeah, just get in the communication loop.
Actually, I was going to say that everyone's Facebook pages are really active. I actually think that our industry props up Facebook in Australia. It's died in every other demographic. But for some reason, it's our platform of choice. And everyone's Facebook pages and newsletters regularly have shout-outs. It's obviously when you're in production and you might be too busy to have a look at everything, then that's a bit hard. But if you've got time, go through them and see what's happening and, build the relationships in person.
But you can just contact them. I mean, our numbers for our screen industry development managers are on the website. So we take calls all the time, not just from Territorians, from everywhere. Yeah. So it's kind of like we get, I want to do a project in the Territory. So we spend a lot of time with people. And look, we do have meetings with people all the time. As Jackie said, that's our job. That's what we do.
I think it's worth pointing out that there's a myth that agencies are hard to contact. We're really not. Like, our email addresses are on the website. It leads to all sorts of spam. But yeah, just track us and come and see us.
I'd love to, unless there are any burning questions, nope. I would love to go through and hear a recent example of what you would classify as a win, like a production or a career escalation or something that's taken place, that a person or a company that you've supported or that the agency supported that has really showcased something that you're proud of.
Oh, I'll go if you like. We've just done Kangaroo, so that's going to be going into production in about 3 weeks. But we started talking to Studio Canal about that quite some time ago, and I think it was when Marion McGowan, the other producer, was actually attached to it, and then she went off and did a series called The Great, so what can you say? Anyway, she set it up very well. But the good thing was about that is that we worked with Studio Canal, which is fantastic, and great to see their commitment coming into that theatrical sector, which is not an easy sector to create content for. But what they did was we got Bunya in, we worked with Studio Canal, and then we were able to bring in Brindle in Alice Springs. And that, I'm so pleased about that, because we've got Brindle now, which is our biggest production company, now sort of co-producing with Bunya. They used to always be in competition. And now they're kind of collaborating together, creating this great film for Studio Canal that will have really, I think they've even pre-sold it to some of the big Studio Canal territories as well as other territories. But it was just great. So, and now we're getting, and they're really in control of all of the crew in Alice Springs and the territory coming in to work for that, working collaboratively with Bunya. So we're really pleased about that.
Fantastic, that's exciting.
I can't have one. Boy Swallows Universe. Ron Howard Eden and all of the attachments that were, brokered through that, and that was amazing. Taste of the Tropics, which is a short form series that's just been made up in Far North Queensland, an initiative with SBS, and then another thing in Far North Queensland we did with long-term unemployed, a sort of training program to, learn to make films, because we wanted to build the crew base up there. And another one, Games Initiative. We have a hub, again, working, we get funding through different departments of the government and supporting long-term unemployed to come in and make games. And one of the games in the last round has just gone on and gangbusters. So, yes, there was someone from the games team there. So there's little things, it's actually, I think the things, we love all the big stuff like Ron Howard, but it's these small little programs and initiatives that are happening all the time. And when someone gets hired out of that, we're thrilled, because it just means that's our job, that's what we're doing. And yeah, I think I love the attachment stuff. I think I love that, because people get opportunities, and we're actually learning to manage attachments, like you said, help manage careers and not just chuck people in, and be really focused on diversity in that as well, and seeing people go on to get really good jobs in the industry. And when I sort of met, third AD working under Ron Howard, it's like, how good is that? And he was a Griffith Uni graduate. And seriously, this is great.
Well, for us, we've got something coming out on the ABC called Austin, which is a fantastic comedy. That will be, that's going to have a lot of Canberra on screen, a lot of how I see Canberra in the suburbs. So that's an amazing, it's been an amazing opportunity for many of the crew in Canberra to get that experience working with Northern Pictures. And so that's been great, but it's also as just personally, I've been involved with SBS, and as a producer had someone attached to me through the screen diversity thing, and just to see to be able to put her in, she's now it's about 5 years on from screen diversity, and she's now a director at the ABC. So I just, that just fills me with joy that, I can mentor people and keep them employed that whole time. So, develop their careers. So that's great.
That's great, Holly. Well, 1 second, Alex. I'm just going to ask Holly a question before you jump in. Can we just loop back around to Austin for a second? Because that was an international co-pro with the UK, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's with
That's a big
ITV.
one. Can you talk about how that relationship was with Screen Canberra working with in collaboration with them? Because I'm assuming there was BFI in it and...
It's not a real
it's not official co-pro. Okay,
no,
gotcha.
it's not official
Co-commission.
Co-commission, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
All right.
so ITV, ABC,
Amazing.
Screen Australia and us. Yeah.
Excellent. Alex, I'd love to hear your thoughts, but then I would like to hear thoughts on interstate co-pros as well.
Got it. I'll be quick. Alone, I don't know if anybody saw it. Small doco series that shot in Tassie a couple of years ago. We were not in it in the finance plan. They didn't apply for production support. Didn't need it. We put an attachment of a young Tasmanian Aboriginal producer by the name of Jorjia Stone on that project, and she was such a star that ITV poached her, and she then worked on season 2 out of the ITV offices in Sydney. And that, for us, is gold dust. Just taking that genuine impact on people's careers, just with that little bit of a nudge that we can give them. That's the sort of thing that makes me excited.
Phenomenal. And just in the last 5 minutes, I would love to talk about interstate co-pros. Have any of you collaborated with each other on productions, or we've got too many people who have changed seats? Yeah.
We've done 3 now with South Australia. We do that
Yeah.
straight up the Stuart Highway. We're
That
just
happens
about
a
to
lot.
do one with Queensland.
Yeah, I'm trying to get NT to not think in a vertical line, think in a
now we're coming across
top end horizontal line.
That's good. No, we are. We've got our first one. It's in. So
Yeah.
we're really excited about that, and we're really happy to do with Queensland. And we are looking at things which we've had initial discussions about, that over the top initiative that we might do from top end over into the Cairns and that northern region, to see how we can better collaborate, especially with our Indigenous and Torres Strait Islander practitioners.
And the studio going up.
Yeah, the studio, which I've
Studio
RSVP'd
opening
for.
in Cairns. Yeah, I hadn't said that. Wow, I've been trying to get all the points in. Yeah, we're opening a studio in Cairns next month. A really nice one, brand new, sparkly, and available for. Sorry, what was the question?
Interstate co-pros. And obviously you've all done interstate co-pros. I was just wondering if anyone on the directly had done one together.
We did Looky Looky. Oh, yes. Yeah, that was quite a unique one, actually. Looky
you talk
Looky,
about
Here
that?
Comes Cookie for NITV SBS, which was raw film out of Tassie and Tamarind Tree out of NT.
And how did that work? Can you unpack that a little bit without obviously...
The original project was developed by Raw, so it was a Tasmanian originated project, then brought in Tamarind Tree and changed the project massively. It became something completely different, and it was just run... I think they ran the post out of Raw in Tassie, but because it was a story about tracking Captain Cook from a First Nations perspective, it was shot right down the East Coast.
They've got this, is it Australian Maritime Museum on that
Yeah,
as
they
well,
did.
which
That
is-
was a Raw
They're really
connection.
entrepreneurial. I know, I thought they were great. But yeah, no, that was a good collaboration. You've
And
just
it's a
reminded me
wonderful
of that.
doc, if anybody hasn't seen it. It's really gorgeous.
Beautiful. We have had a question come through, and I think I know the answer to this, but the question's around, are there other pockets of money from government for the screen industry through different departments? And you did mention maritime just then, and obviously tourism's been brought up as well. Are there any others that people should be aware of?
I think for us, it's really about the government expects us to manage the screen sector. I think, and people come to us and they want to double dip in tourism. It doesn't work that way. We're putting in significant amounts of money to fund productions these days, as is required, because it's quite costly to film in the territory. So tourism, just FYI for anyone who wants to film there, it's all about the amplification of marketing. They will put money into marketing, not just in Australia and New Zealand, but they'll put it into global priority territories like Germany or USA, that kind of thing.
There's a question.
If you have a project that covers, let's say, the southeast of Australia and includes regional centres, at what point would you start the conversation with the individual agencies, and how does that work with, say, Sunshine Coast, which I know has their own regional funding available to projects?
you got to start somewhere. So I'd probably pick where. So are you based on the Sunshine Coast? Oh, from Melbourne. Yeah, it is difficult when you're traversing borders because sometimes we have. I mean, we encourage it, but it's sometimes there are minimum spends or, minimum, and it can be more tricky for you to be dealing with too many agencies. So sometimes you want to have a lead there and a priority relationship, which is not to say you wouldn't get support elsewhere, but I think, there are. I'm just thinking of an example. There are projects that might say be Queensland-based and they're using Queensland crew and they're going to take them to another state and that will reduce their Queensland spend. They might pick up some spend in another state and their hotel rooms. And again, it's easier, I think, when it's incentive-driven and it becomes around tax and, how much have you spent here, how much have you spent there. But I suppose it's hard if it's truly road tripping that you want to sort of have maybe a priority relationship, and that might be around the key creatives.
I would, if I were you, I'd start with Vix Grainne. If you're based out of Melbourne, talk to them
start
first.
With where you're based. Yeah.
They'll give you an idea of when a good time is to talk to the rest of us.
We are on the absolute countdown up here, so I might wrap this up so that people can catch their breath. But if you do have questions, can people come up and say hi afterwards?
Yes, and I think we've all got staff.
Wonderful.
We do.
So there are people in the room, people are open to conversations, build a relationship, and thank you all for joining us this morning. And I hope you have an amazing conference.
Thanks, Rosie.
Thank you all.